Hi everyone. Let's talk about this Mars-Mercury conjunction because it appears to be um, quite loud. So it's been building up actually, really for the past week. Okay. And I think people have been feeling it and experiencing it in different ways. Um, You can see here, I've just put the chart up actually for when they are pretty much exactly conjunct or a minute apart, which is 5:37 p.m. this afternoon here in Melbourne on the 20th of October. So that's their exact conjunction. Mercury has been, moving towards Mars the past week. So it's fair to say that the past week we've probably been feeling this energy building up. And given Mercury is now, well, from today, it'll start moving away from Mars, the energy will start to dissipate. Not immediately, but it'll feel different to what it has, let's say, the last 7 days. I mentioned just a couple of points in my new moon video about the Mercury Mars conjunction, and I feel it's important to speak to it a little bit more because I am noticing a lot of frustration and anger in people's minds and in people's words. And I'm not here to say it's right or wrong or unjustified or otherwise. It's not my place to do that. I'm just merely here to say that I am observing this all around me on social media, in my personal life, with people I know, with their situations. It's just very potent and very obvious. Now, both Mercury and Mars are evening stars here in this story, and they are in a feminine sign, Scorpio, a fixed sign, and a water sign, and a sign that really does, dredge up and dig up some pretty intense, perhaps feelings or responses or reactions, or desires, or it can even be fears that come up because Scorpio in the eighth house and Pluto does correspond to, our unconscious desires and also our what we may experience or feel as our own personal limitations. That's why Scorpio is the sign of transformation, because it ultimately and potentially can lead us to some type of transformative experience or journey or moment. But before we experience that, we must actually face our personal limitations. That's what Scorpio brings to our attention as well. And that can, be very, very frustrating at times. Now, Mars is, it's an angry planet. Okay, let's, we can't make Mars Venus. Mars is Mars. Is Mars, and whichever you know doctrines or teachings you look through, Mars is Mars. It's a malefic. It was a much bigger malefic back in the day, Babylonian times, Babylonian astrology, Mesopotamia, the way the divinities were viewed then. Mars was, he was a real bad guy. And look, of course, Mars, has its good qualities, right? We need Mars to help us, stand up for what we believe in, fight for ourselves, defend ourselves, protect others, fight for others. That's all important, necessary, useful. So it's not about making Mars the bad guy necessarily, but it is about understanding what actually happens when Mercury joins up with Mars. It's very, very straightforward. Actually, Mercury corresponds to the mind, particularly our left brain, okay, which is connected to our everyday thought processes. You know, how you think, what you're going to think about, what ideas come up in your mind, what conversations and communications you are having with people, what you are reading, what you're listening to. It's all levels of communication at a very personal level. So if Mercury corresponds to our mind, now everything that we experience and happen has multiple layers to it. But one of the biggest components is our mental thought process relative to our perspective on any given thing that may be going on, anything that we are paying attention to. It is our mind that we experience feeling disturbed or angry or upset or bothered. That's where it all kind of kicks off, if you like. There are deeper roots, yes, but it is the mind that can be disturbed that then, creates these waves internally, okay, that create all these other experiences of disturbance. So you put a planet like Mars next to Mercury, obviously at best, it's going to have. I'll read some things out of a particular book in a moment, just from a psychological archetypal level. But the harshest and most unconscious and most difficult level of a Mars Mercury conjunction is anger in the mind, anger in our thoughts, anger in what we speak, what comes out of our mouth. And of course, the hook to that is going to be the current circumstances around you that you are observing or hooking into or connecting, things that are creating a reaction, things that you don't like, things that piss you off. Now, I posted some things on my Facebook page, on my astrological Facebook page, relative to the current protests that are happening collectively. I mean, there's so many going on, right? They're fucking going on all the time, right? There was some 2 weeks ago, there was some a month ago. There's so many going on. So it can be a little bit hard to distinguish at times which protests belong to which date exactly. However, having said that, it is a known fact that there were, you know, specific protests that took place both in, as far as I know, both in London and in the USA in the last, let's say, 48 hours. And there were tens and thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people. And that's not a conspiracy theory. That's just what I'm seeing. Now, is what I'm saying incorrect in the numbers? It could be. This is the point that I'm getting at. Somebody on my Facebook page didn't like the fact that I posted this video depicting numerous states in the USA where it was showing numerous numbers of people protesting. Now, I don't care necessarily about, the governments. I'm not voting for one or the other. I'm not a lefty or a righty. I'm not into that shit, period. What I am into is humanity coming together. And for humanity to come together, there has to be distress and crisis and cataclysmic events. Because otherwise, if we're left to our own devices, people by their very nature are just fucking selfish. They just give a shit about their own self. That's it. It's just a sad fucking fact. At the personality level, this is what's going on with every individual, more or less. So for people to come together, there's got to be, big fucking shock waves that come through that rock people's foundation in one way or another. And that's how people will rise. And that's why people will unite. No one is going to stand up or unite if, their little world isn't being rocked. So whether it was 1 million people protesting or whether it was 100,000 people protesting is fucking irrelevant. People are, focused on these points, these factors that may have some discrepancy and are losing sight of the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is what? It's Pluto in Aquarius and Pluto out of bounds in southern declination, which is just translates literally to freedom, equality, justice, fairness for all. It doesn't matter what fucking zip code you live in. Everyone has the right to those things. So people are getting caught up, especially with this Mars Mercury conjunction, getting caught up in the squabbles and, argumentative kind of personal perspectives and opinions of this, that, and the other. And what I say is, fuck all that. Just take a step back and think about the meaning of the bigger picture. Not everybody is going to agree on the same things, on the same government, on the same morals, on the same principles. That's a fucking given. We have to be able to put all that aside, our own sort of, philosophical orientation or personal beliefs. We have to be, objective enough to just step down from that and just see what is more important right now. Is it for me to feel that I'm right in what I've, stood by the last 4 or 5 years or whatever the fuck it is? Is that more important than what's actually going to happen to humanity overall in the bigger picture? Well, if that's what is motivating people to react and to become angry and to attack others at these times, then they are just self absorbed in their own wrongness and rightness. And this Mars Mercury conjunction, this is the very thing that it will evoke in people because both those planets are personal planets. They're not about the collective, not at all. It is up to us to bring in some consciousness, some objectivity, some detachment, and understand the bigger purpose, the bigger cause, the bigger reason for everything that's going on right now, regardless of whether we have these, dividing views. Because, America is a classic for that, it is so divided, that country, probably more divided than any other country in the world, which is sad to see. Everyone's color of everyone's blood is red. Everyone needs water. Everyone needs oxygen. Everyone has a right to live and breathe. Everyone has a right to peace. It doesn't matter what your zip code is or what your ethnicity is or what your personal fucking preferences are. So let's get into just a few psychological archetypal descriptions of this Mercury Mars to consider. So I guess some principles are a sharp and passionate mind, mental energy and determination, a talent for clear and decisive communication, pointed humour, a tendency toward sharp opinions and argument, rash and heated words, pointed sarcasm or insults, hectic mental stress. The next passage is called Character and Themes. Qualities of verbal directness, clear and decisive communication, urges to get to the point and speak one's mind or truth, forceful, enthusiastic speech, animated, emphatic gestures while talking, propositions and calls to action, a sharp and passionate mind, mental energy and determination, a single-minded pursuit of one's objectives. A gift for incisive analysis, argument and debate, quick responses, pointed humour, Sharp wisecracks and sarcasm. The first human who hurled an insult instead of a stone was the founder of civilization. In brackets, Freud. What's he saying there? Freud, metry, MA. Practical skills, dexterity, full stop. The shadow qualities is the next paragraph. Ongoing sharp opinions and disagreements, rash and heated words, arguments and quarrels, a lack of harmony or grace in speaking, a rude and unsubtle delivery, a tendency to prosecute matters forward energetically but without sensitivity. She was a professional athlete of the tongue. Huxley, in brackets. A habit of interpreting or chiding others, putting one's foot in one's mouth, speaking before thinking, ongoing pointed sarcasm and insults, aggressive slander, angry words, vows. Our swords shall play the orators for us, in brackets, Marlowe. Mental restlessness, hectic details and demands, busy office work, stressful drives in traffic and rush hour, sharp or disordered sounds. So those are just some words, that really, at a very basic personality psychological level, are good words to describe the energy of Mars, Mercury. As I said, they are both personal planets, and so we are all feeling this in a personal way. And because there are so many huge things going on right now on the planet, things that are, ultimately going to depict, define, and create the new world, the new reality, our new lives. And it is important for us to unite. That's it. If you have voted or you are a fan of, your government, whatever fucking country you come from, that's fine. This is not about this. Because those people are there for a purpose at the moment. They will not be there forever. Far from it. We will be here, most of us, unless you're in your 80s or 90s. Most of us will be here a lot longer than these current figures playing out their cards through these systems at the moment. And just to quarrel and to divide and to create conflict with each other is absolutely fucking futile. Let me remind you, 5 years ago, if you did not comply with that liquid crap in your arm and you had a dying parent in hospital, you were prevented from actually seeing your family, your dying parent, your child, whoever it was. Do not forget what compliance did to everyone. Do not forget. So, circling back to Mars Mercury, it is absolutely quite an intense energy at the moment. If used constructively and objectively, it can be a very powerful force for matters, people, situations, and things that need that kind of support, that need that kind of voice, because they themselves don't have it for one reason or another. So it can be used in a very constructive way, but it takes someone who has, enough detachment, objectivity, and compassion to step into that role, although we all should be. Because like I said before, this is not about your zip code. And this is not just about your country. or my country. I never say my country. I'm actually Greek Australian, technically speaking. And Australia is a great country. Greece is an extraordinary country, but neither of them belong to me. And I don't care just for Australia or just for Greece. I care for the whole planet. The way I communicate and what I share, and when it comes to really serious, critical, important matters that are going on, um, very specific transitions that are going on, the passion that you see or that you hear in me is 100% coming from the deepest place, the most authentic place, and the deepest place of care for everyone. And it actually comes from the Sabian symbol that describes my own ascendant. If I read to you the Sabian symbol of my ascendant, you'd go, ah, yeah, that's Anastasia, 100%. And really, without reading it and the like, it just describes a soul who's here to to not follow. Okay, she's looking for, or he's looking for, their own authentic path, and there's a deep care and concern for the bigger picture, for the bigger meaning, for the whole, rather than just one's own personal needs. And it is a soul who doesn't bow down to false systems, especially. That's the Sabian symbol to my ascendant, in short. So use that Mars Mercury energy, for good. Try and use it in a positive way if you can. If you can't, if it's pissing you off and if people are pissing you off and if you're getting triggered and the like, then just try and take a step back. Try and kind of like withdraw from whatever it is you're observing or participating in that's causing this disturbance in the mind. Sometimes it's better just to step back, just pause, take a rest, go out in nature, go for a walk, to avoid creating unnecessary conflict within yourself and for those around you. If this is what it's stirring up inside you. On the other hand, it could be, like I said before, somebody can really take a lot of value out of this because they can really be a very powerful voice for somebody who really needs it. And this could be like literally a million different examples. It can be in the bigger scale collective spectrum of things, of the psychosis that's going on still in many different places, people's freedoms, liberties taken away, people being unalived, etc. And then, you can even bring it down to very minute things in comparison to what I just mentioned, but still important, right? Like, let's just say, for example, let's just say you're at work, right? You're employed by some company and you're at work at the moment and your manager is a complete fucking bully. I've been in that situation. I know exactly what it's like, and it can be really a really painful experience. Bullies are just, yeah, they're not nice people, not at all. And usually the most insecure people. Because if you had confidence, security, you wouldn't behave like that. You wouldn't need to. But anyway, back to the point. You might be in a work situation where your manager's really bullying you at the moment or has been for a while. And, one of your co-workers steps in, uses this Mars Mercury to cut that shit down, has the courage, Mars, to do it. Not saying that you don't have the courage necessarily, but some people, are just more in touch with that warrior courage energy than others. It doesn't mean that the ones that are not are, any less valuable. We're just different in how we experience and express and live our life. I'm a Pallas Athena. That's it. I'm Greek as well. I'm an Aries. I've got these warrior signatures through and through and through, the Sabian symbol of my ascendant, all this stuff. I didn't choose this chart to sit back and not say anything. So use the Mars Mercury with wisdom, with compassion, in a constructive way to help and support either yourself or others. That's the best thing we can do here. Otherwise, it's going to be poison. And, one thing I've learned, you can never take your fucking words back. Once you've said something to someone, you can't take it back. Yeah, you can apologize and yes, they may forgive you, but the memory, the long-term memory in our consciousness, it doesn't forget. So unless, and even if you really mean it, still think twice. Think twice. We can't take our words back, and words can be very, very hurtful. So let's continue to unite and to support each other and put aside our differences and our different perspectives for the sake of the entire human race and where we are headed. Thanks for listening. Wishing you all a peaceful new moon in Libra. Although, given what's happening on the earth plane, it is very difficult to find peace these days. And that's why we do need to, take some time out and just create that space of peace for ourselves, because this reality, the way it is at the moment, it's far from peace. So it is up to us to create that. But like I said in my new moon video, this new moon is all about highlighting the sheer, you know, imbalances and injustices. And squaring Pluto, this is about humanity. This is about people rising together. And we are going to, we're going to face a lot more hurdles, and there's going to be a lot more sort of, differences of opinions and divisions and things like that. But we, for those of us that can be a little bit more objective, a little bit more detached most of the time, we've just got to keep, leading by example. Leading by example. See you all very soon. Take care. Use this energy in the best way.